Let's make form processing simpler with FormUtils. Have you ever had to work with HTML tables filled with rows and columns of data? If you have, you know that picking out all the data out of the form scope can be difficult. As a ColdFusion developer, I wish forms would just submit arrays and structs. As I look at this table, I can see we got ID, first name, last name, email, and we've got multiple rows. I really wish the data would come over in that format. Instead, when I hit the submit button, I just get all these fields that really have names that are just not as clear as I would want them to be. You know, I'm kind of having to separate the arrays and the structs with underscores, which really is not even close to what the original is, and I just really don't want to have to do all that processing. Okay, let's go over to GitHub and download a FormUtils repository off of my site. Okay, we're going to be opening it up on the desktop, which is going to bring up the GitHub app. It's going to ask me to choose a directory to copy the repository into. Okay, there's the default. That's last time I downloaded it went there, so I'm just going to pick a new one. I'm going to clone the repository, and it's going to copy down the files. Happens really quick. There aren't really a lot of files going on here, and I now have the code ready. I'm going to be using Ortus Solutions CommandBox, and what CommandBox gets me is the ability to have a command line interface for ColdFusion. Now this is particularly useful because later I'm going to be using Visual Studio, and Visual Studio has built into it a terminal, so I can bring up and bring down the whole site just right from the terminal. I don't have to use any kind of additional application to do that. The other good thing about CommandBox is that I can switch different versions of ColdFusion. I can do upgrades and downgrades, and it's just very simple. It does not require a lot of configuration in order to do this. Next, I'm going to be using VSCode. VSCode is everywhere, so you shouldn't have any trouble finding it. Let me tell you a little bit about why I like to use it. It brings most of the activities associated with development all into one place. You don't have to hunt around when you're doing different things here. You can edit files, and they're all color-coded by purpose. You can find and replace whole directories. You can instantly see the status of your local files versus how GitHub is currently seeing things, so you know when to do a commit and things like that. There are extensions that make ColdFusion files look great. It has a built-in terminal. When used with CommandBox, I can start and stop ColdFusion servers with ease. Last but not least, it looks very similar to Azure Data Studio because it's built on some of the same technologies. So I'm able to, a lot of the things that I learned in VS Code also apply to some of my database work. Let's open up our repository. All right, I got to navigate over here, and it opens up and we can see all the files associated with the project here. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that the terminal is showing what I want it to see. So let me shuffle some windows around here, and there we go. We're going to take a look at the terminal. Let's make sure we're in the right directory. All right, okay, that's exactly where my files are, so I'm in good shape there. Okay, let's start up CommandBox. Just type in box, and up it comes, and I can see the status of how things are going right now. Very good, very good. I'm in the right directory. All right, now the first time I run the site, I have to run I can run an install, and it's going to bring in all the different files that are associated with the site. I've ran it before, so for me it's going to go very quick. For you, it might have to download the latest version of Adobe ColdFusion and get those installed. So those can take a little bit of time, but that's okay. So we're going to get all the files installed. It takes a couple seconds here. All right, so now we're going to type in start, and we're going to bring up the entire application. When the website comes up, it shows Brian Kotek's original page. Gives you some more examples of how to do this. However, I'm going to be switching over to my table example to see how things are working out here. Okay, let's take a look. All right, at the very top of the screen, I've got my array that I loaded in with some data here. Got some user information here. Okay, let's go down to the table, and we're going to be iterating over this data. You can see the name in the input fields kind of have these underscore things in them. Not too clean. Okay, it will work. Each name will be unique, but processing this data is not going to be particularly simple. Okay, let's go back up to the post operation. I'm just going to be doing a simple dump of the before and the after, so we can kind of see what the difference between the two is. All right, let's head back over to the web page and get ourselves over to the table. And I'm just going to hit Save Data here. And on the left, we have arrays and structs, and on the right, the form. Well, the form did, in fact, submit all the fields, but these really are not as clean as the original. I can't really iterate over those very cleanly. And let's see. Let's take a look at the FormUtils approach here. Okay, we still have the same array of structs of data at the very top. And going down to where we process the form, we've actually changed the form a little bit. Note that the names are in a much more structured format. This is going to create field names that are very similar to how ColdFusion likes to name its variables. These are still HTML variables, but they're ready to be in a much more clean process. Okay, let's head up onto the top. And we're going to be doing a couple of things. But first off, we're going to instantiate a copy of FormUtils. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be passing in form to the one real function that matters, and that is the build form collections. It's actually going to take the form fields and change them into something much, much more useful. All right, let's try our new version here, do a refresh on the page, hit Save Data, and sure enough, we get back our form in array and structure format. Much simpler, much easier to deal with, and it is in fact identical to the original. Of course, if you would change some form fields, you would have had slightly different data, but this is much easier to process. Thank you very much, everybody. Happy coding!